appreciate you for doing this, Craig.
My pleasure.
You got any plans for after this?
No, just go back to work.
What does a typical day look like for you?
Well, since I'm the owner, I just do whatever needs to be done at that specific time. So if somebody doesn't show up, I drive a truck. If, there is a cow that needs tending to, I play veterinarian. You never know. There's no such thing as a farm running out of work. You just go until you can't go anymore.
Wow. Well, I first heard of Mill-King at Refined Coffee Company in Lake Jackson. They had just started carrying your product, and I was like, "Oh man, where is this from?" And they were ranting and raving. It's from Texas, so that's what prompted this conversation, man. And I'm real happy. Thank you for showing us around too, and showing us your operation. I really love what you're doing. So, for people that aren't familiar with Mill-King, can you introduce yourself and let everyone know what operation you got going on?
Yeah. So to introduce myself,
take that a little further. Or closer. There you go.
I apologize.
Oh, you're good.
To introduce myself, I am Craig Miller. I am a third generation dairyman. Me and my family own and operate Mill-King Market Creamery. We bottle milk, so we pasteurize it, low-temp pasteurize it, and bottle it. We make cheese, butter, cream, and then we deliver it. We're in stores like Whole Foods and Cox's Farmers Markets, Wheatsville's. We're in distributors like Benny Keith and Cisco, Fresh Point, Farm to Table. So we are a fairly new business. It was 2010 when we started running the processing plant, but we've been milking and in the dairy industry since 1947, 1949. I forget the exact date.
So it's been in your family this entire time. And you grew up doing it too, I imagine, right?
Yes, I do not remember not having a job. Yes.
What was it like when you were growing up as a kid and living on the ranch? Is it like, I picture waking up early morning before school and you were going to milk the cows. Was that, what is it like?
So my job growing up would have been to take care of the baby calves. So I would have had at any given time possibly 80 little calves to feed before we went to school in the morning. And ironically, that is the one job on a dairy you could not pay me to do today, just because it takes so much patience. And, keeping them healthy, and it's so much work, and you just have to be on top of your game 100% of the time when you're doing that. And yeah, I don't think I could keep up with that. And that's what I was doing when I was 10.
When your family started it, and I mean, where you're at now, y'all do it's your own operation. It's all done in house. But when you started it, we kind of talked about this before the podcast, but there was, like, how did it work? How did you get dairy to customers before you started your own operation internally?
So the way the conventional dairy industry works is everyone signed up with a co-op. The co-op that we were last associated with would have been, say, Lone Star. Lone Star, in their contract, they tell you can't sell to anybody but them. And they tell you how much they're going to pay. They tell you how much milk to produce. They tell you when they're coming to pick it up, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, literally there is no say on the dairy side. And that is the vast majority of dairy farms in the United States are still run that way. And, it is rare to find an operation like ours that has independent farms. So we here on our dairy, we can sell to whoever we want, obviously, but we also have 3 other dairies that we work with here in the Waco area. They can sell to whoever they want. We don't have contracts with them. And it works out good for everybody. But, that way, they can make a living and we can make a living, and we make a healthy product for the public.
Is Lone Star the only co-op in Texas, or are there multiple co-ops in Texas?
Just off the top of my head, I can think of Lone Star, DFA, and Select.
And are they part of different regions? Like, does Lone Star have a certain part of Texas, or
No, they're competitors on one hand, but they work together on the other side. So, they really don't price against each other when it comes to selling to places. And then, as far as DFA, that's Dean Foods. They own Dean Foods, which DFA controls about 70% of the milk processing production in the United States. And Dean Foods is processing about 70% of the milk in the United States. So pretty much DFA just buys the companies that they want to sell to.
When did this start? When did the co-op organization start? Because at one point I imagine dairy farmers were selling directly to people. So how did that organization start?
So, when my grandfather first started, you sold directly to the processor, and then if the processor got too much milk, he would just reject your load, and there would be nobody to stick up for you and say, hey man, you can't do that. You need to pay me. And so the dairies got together and they formed these entities at that time before there were co-ops that would later become the co-ops. And these entities would fight for your rights and they would help you. And just over time, two things always rise to the top: cream and crap. And that's what happened. And so the heads of these co-ops, and somewhere late 70s, early 80s, started changing bylaws, and where they didn't have to share the incomes if, say, the co-op purchased a processing plant. They no longer had to share that income with the dairies that were actually putting up the money to do that. And also they changed the bylaws so that in the beginning, one dairy farmer got one vote whenever there was an issue to arise in the annual meetings. Well, they changed that so that the larger dairies had more say than a smaller dairy. And then from there, you can start consolidating power, and, it just kind of, the wheels fell off the bus.
Yeah, it started off as a good thing, but it got corrupted.
How many times in life does that happen?
Yeah.
That's exactly how it went.
That's wild. And I bet a lot of people don't know that.
I'm sure a lot of dairymen don't know that.
Yeah. It's hard to comprehend. And I bet that is the same thing that happens to most of the food supply.
I would agree with that statement 100%.
Wow. That's wild, man. So what are some of the differences? What are things that you can do since you're selling directly to the customer and you're doing everything in-house versus someone that is in the machine or part of the co-op?
So since we are not on in the machine, we're not on the Chicago Milk Exchange, and so we're not part of the market. As the stock market goes up or crashes, our pricing isn't dictated by what's going on around us. So, whenever, say, oil spikes, and, it just cost everybody so much to put groceries on the shelves in these stores, it doesn't really affect us. It doesn't say, and it does affect us. I should restate that. It doesn't affect us as much. And then inflation, since, we are taking care of our own commodities as far as what we feed the animals. And then we're taking care of our own processing, trucking, distribution, labor, the whole thing. So inflation doesn't hit us as bad. So whenever we first started, I mean, we were much more expensive than the competitor, and say the competitor will say is organic milk. Now we're comparative. We're a premium product and we cost about the same amount. So
when you made that switch, because it was your decision to get out of the co-op, what did your family think? Since y'all were part of this for a long time, was there some pushback from your family?
There was, and if you ask my father today, he'd say that he was on board from day one. He was he was the hardest nut to crack. I mean, he had been told his entire life to go in one direction, but you know, after the market crash of '08, the dairy, and I'm going to get off a little bit on a tangent.
Fine, dude.
So in '08, and I believe it was '08, our dairy market collapsed. And from '08 to 2010, about a third of the dairies in the United States went out of business. Mm-hmm. This happened when two companies in China, dairy companies, were caught because people were injured. Actually, they died, so infants. They were putting a chemical to fake protein into the milk so that they could basically stretch the milk and get more money for it. Mm. And no one would have ever found out, except one company was using one chemical to do it and one company was using a separate chemical to do it. And when you add the two chemicals together, it creates a poison. Well, they were putting this into baby formula, and they were obviously, these Chinese mothers would purchase one company and then the next company, and it killed a couple people. Well, the Chinese government came in. They executed the leaders of both companies and then charged their widows with the bullet that but being the Chinese government, they're not going to throw all that tainted milk away. So of course they sold it to the US government, and we took it, and companies like Nestle bought it. And so all of that milk being thrown onto our economy in the middle of a economic recession literally tanked a third of the dairies in the United States. And that is the backdrop where, you know, me and my wife, we were going around consulting for other dairies. We're seeing that Dad is struggling, and, you know, we saw a need in the business that somebody needs to be making this product for everybody, and we need to help Dad out. And we wanted to get off the road and adopt our daughter. So it's just kind of one of those things that, you know, we were pulled into it. Mm-hmm. And so we started, and our co-op at that point in time was nice enough to allow us to do a little. We could buy our own milk back from them, and then sell the, you know, process it, package it, and sell it at farmers markets. And we started out in farmers markets in Austin, and that's the way to go for a small business. You just can't get that much foot traffic anywhere else for a small farm. And one thing led to another, and we just kept growing and growing. I think every 7 months for the first 2 or 3 years, we would double our business. Well, it's easy when you start with zero. Start with one.
But still, getting your name out there, it
was great. It was great. Yeah.
And the power of social media, it wasn't really, I guess it was pretty prevalent back in 2010, but probably nowhere to where it is now, right?
Yeah.
Are y'all finding the use of social media to expand the brand a little bit?
Yes, and one of my major jobs was actually going out and talking to chefs and, knocking on doors and saying hello, working with people. Honestly, I don't have to do any of that anymore. It is, you know, caught fire and it is going on its own. I honestly don't have to advertise anymore.
Wow. When you were having those conversations in the beginning, how were people taking to the company? Because, you got the big brand names at HEB or Kroger's now, and it's this, company that no one's heard before. So how did you get people to try it? What were some of the things that you were saying?
Seriously, it was the farmers market. We worked with advertising on the television a little bit. I don't know if that helped at all. We did, Facebook ads and, different venues like that on the internet. And there was some good things. I mean, we've been spotlighted on Texas Bucket List, and that was that did help out a lot whenever you have something like that where people come in kind of like what you're doing and talk about the good things and maybe the bad things of the business. But I mean, people want to be educated, and so when you have something like that, it's great.
Yeah.
But really, it was word of mouth that gave us the vast majority of our business, getting out to farmers market, sharing the product, giving samples, getting it in front of chefs. And then if a chef liked it, then he's spreading it to entire towns.
His network. Yeah.
Yeah. He's going, and then one chef will stay at this restaurant for a year and then go to that restaurant and then bounce over to two more. And, and it's just, it's just good.
Yeah.
It's good.
What does the production process look like compared to when you were in the co-op versus to what you're doing now? Did you have to, I imagine were there any inputs that they made you put in, or like what did the process look like?
So the milk co-ops, they just deal with dairies. Okay. So, when you're talking about the co-op, they might have different things where they'll pay a little extra if you are grass fed, or if you are, I'm trying to think of some of them they offer around here. The organic label. I don't know if the co-ops will mess with anything else, but for the most part, they're just purchasing milk, and it just needs to be clean, and that is it. That's all they care for.
Okay.
So, if you are signed up with, say, their program to pay more for being grass fed, they take that milk, they put it on the same truck as the dairy down the street that's not grass fed, and then they go and sell it to the exact same companies. And
so it's mixed together.
It's mixed together.
No way. So the grass fed and the organic is all mixed.
I swear.
Oh my God.
At least the ones around here are the same company sending the same truck. They're not sending, a special truck just for that grass fed milk. They're not. Yeah.
How does no one catch on to that? Why is that even a thing still?
Well, in this area, the people getting paid for being grass fed are the directors of the co-op. And so who are you going to complain to? So.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's a corrupted system.
It is. It's horrible. And it just makes groceries more expensive for the more expensive and less healthy for the average American.
That's almost like the documentaries that you see on organic farming. You'll see an organic farm literally right next to a conventional farm, and that organic farm is probably getting the overspray from everything else. So it's maybe, and even the term organic is kind of diluted, right?
So, you know, it's one thing if it's a tomato farm, but there are ethical concerns I have when it comes to a dairy farm. You know, first off, I used to consult on organic farms, and I'm not going to name any names. However, usually they were the dirtiest ones that I dealt with.
Mm.
And they were more likely to have the animal rights concerns that people are up in arms with. So, in everyone's head, when they think of an organic farm, they think of a small, small farm where one guy just owns a couple cows and he's out and he hugs them every day. But that's not the nature of what's going on today. These organic farms are just as big as the conventional farms that are factory farms. And yeah, they have some grass that they can walk out onto, what they call grass, but it might be a mile away.
Mm.
And there is, if someone cares about what they're doing, they're going to take more pride in the product that they're creating. It doesn't matter if they have an organic label or not. I will say organic cows, and I'm trying to think of a nice way of saying what I want to say. It's like I said earlier, healthy cows make healthy milk. And if an animal needs to be treated, it needs to be treated. It needs to be taken care of. But if your organic protocol says that you can't do anything for it, then you have one thing that you can do for that animal at that point in time, and that's just milk out whatever infection or mastitis that they have, keep it off to the side, and it's manageable if you care about what you're doing. So I'm not saying that all organic farms are bad. I'm saying that just like large factory farms can be a bad thing, large organic farms can definitely be a bad thing, and you are more likely to get pus in milk from an organic farm just because they are less able to use treatments because of their protocols than a conventional farm. You need to know where your food comes from, and I don't want to steer people away from drinking milk, eating meat, or any of that. Vegetables are no different. Anytime you grind something up and put stuff together, people have found ways to stretch things, to cheapen things. Just talking about cheese, shredded cheese. You think that's a simple thing. Well, it's all coated in cellulose. There's nothing digestible in that cellulose. And the only reason they do that is so it doesn't stick to itself. And I mean, that is one way. Put cellulose on it, or you could just grate it yourself and not wreck your gut. But I mean, those are the choices that you make.
I don't think people know stuff like that.
Unfortunately, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the codes and the FDA say that in an agricultural product, if it's less than 1% of the overall volume of that product, you do not have to put that on the label. For instance, aspartame, right? It's a sweetener. It's a carcinogen. It's very cheap. was it about 15 years ago, Dean Foods was lobbying the federal government to make, so they were already putting it in 1% so they could sell this to schools. They sweeten the milk, and so kids will drink more of it. Kind of sounds like cigarettes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But they were lobbying the government to make it an infinite amount of aspartame that they could put in the label without putting it, that way they could basically make it as sweet as they wanted to make it and wouldn't have to admit to anyone that it wasn't a pure product.
When you talk about stuff like this and your operation that you're doing here, what kind of reception do you get from the establishment?
I can say that my cousin, he works for the larger co-op, DFA. It's best if we just don't talk about things a lot of times.
Really?
Yeah.
That's it's scary, man, because there's we're so, unless you really dive into it, people are so disconnected from the farm, from where we get our food from. And it's just easier to go to HEB and grab Borden milk or whatever the name brand is, and you don't put a lot of thought of it. And then it's clean labeled, or it says grass fed, grass finished, organic milk, and you buy it and you feel good about it, right? It makes you feel good, like you're making a good choice. When in reality, we just learn that it's all mixed together anyway.
Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it is, and not every company does that. But once again, I don't care if it's milk, meat, peanuts. You need to know where your food comes from. And that's just the state of the world we live in. It was always that way. We just didn't realize how bad it was.
What's your process of bottling milk and like what goes into it compared to the conventional milk?
So we are different in a lot of ways. So, our animals, are treated differently. So, when you think of an organic farm, you think that everything is fed non-GMO food and all of that kind of stuff. Well, there's not enough non-GMO corn in the United States to feed every organic cow in the United States. So they have to get exemptions with their labeling association. They say, well, we did the best we could. Well, we just don't do it. We feed no soy or corn. And then we treat them the same way as an organic association would treat them. But then there are no allowances for that. And then once it gets to the processing plant, it definitely changes from there. So we do not homogenize our milk.
What does that mean?
So to homogenize is to mix up permanently. So when you let milk sit, the cream will rise to the top. The reason it does is the fat globules act like little balloons and they just rise to the top. So to cure this, you pop all the little balloons, to say. So the way that a conventional processor will do this is they literally throw it through a pump into a stainless steel plate so fast that it shatters the globules. That's not too crazy of a thing, except they have to do it so hard to make sure they pop every little balloon that it disassociates the protein chains inside those fat globules. So think of your gut as being a filter, and every filter has a certain allowance of the particles that it strains out. Well, if your gut can strain out 30 microns, and now these proteins that used to be 50 are now 10, you have things moving in and out of your bloodstream that aren't designed to be there. And that is a large reason why people, when they drink conventional milk, they get headaches, heartburn, indigestion, leaky gut syndrome, and a whole range of other things that I'm sure I forgot. Which that is the biggest thing that we do different. We also low-temp pasteurize. So there are enzymes in milk that help you digest a whole slew of things. So there's enzymes in real milk that will help you digest lactose, that will help you digest red meat or fiber. And all of these things, well, if you cook them at a high temperature, you destroy those enzymes. Well, we cook it at 145 degrees, which is the state minimum. We would like to actually cook it slower and lower. However, the state will not allow us to do it. But the conventional companies are cooking it at 180 degrees for 3 seconds. And so they're just flash frying everything and going. So that is a big reason why a lot of people would find our milk more digestible. And then the third reason, we don't put any chemicals whatsoever in the milk or the cream. So I'm talking about the vitamin A, D, E, the fake calcium. All of those things are synthetic, and they're all carcinogens. They all come from China, and we don't put any of that in anything that we produce. Your body can't even absorb them.
So why are they required? Is it just a money grab? They are forcing these producers to buy those supplies, and they have to use them.
Well, back in the 60s, there were nutritional requirements that the United States needed to see to. And whenever they created these requirements, all these products were made in the United States with inspectors overseeing everything. And so whenever you bought calcium, it was derived from things like shellfish, things that were naturally occurring in nature. However, all of those things now are 100% synthetic and 0% digestible. So you could drink all of the straight calcium you wanted from one of these companies, and it still would not increase your calcium. And
at what point in the process do they put this stuff in?
At the very beginning, whenever they're cooking it.
Wow. And then they just dump it in?
Yeah.
Is it a liquid form, powder form, or what does it look like?
It's a liquid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's wild that there's so many people. When I was growing up, I don't remember everyone being lactose intolerant.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like everyone drank milk.
So when we first started this company, we came across this statistic from the FDA, and I wouldn't know where to find it now. So take it for what you will. But 30% of Americans believe they're lactose intolerant, and only 5% really are. So there definitely is a lactose intolerant population out there. However, about a quarter of the population is allergic or intolerant to something other than lactose. So whether it being the processing, whether it being chemicals, whether it being homogenization, or whatever it is. However, they have all been raised to believe they're lactose intolerant. And once again, I don't want to run down milk or these companies. Wheat is no different. You know, you have gluten intolerances, and you can eat bread in Europe. That doesn't make much sense. Well, it does if you're part of the food industry. You know exactly why that is, because people are intolerant to the processing of the flour or whatever it is. You know, you look at BP, the Brazilian meat packing company that owns most of the meat packing in the United States. You know, what was it? 20 years ago, they had their meat slurry, you know, and you think you're getting hamburger, and it's it's a meat slurry. It's not just meat. It's you know,
Like pink slime or something, right?
that is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was, I read something the other day that it is not even talked about anymore, but like meat packing companies use some type of slime to like fill in the loose ends, I guess, which is
Yeah.
wild.
It's horrible.
That's not even real food.
It's not even real food. Yeah.
Have you had people drink your milk for the first time and say that they're lactose intolerant or they can't handle dairy or milk and then come back to you and say, hey man, like I actually can drink this now and I do.
That is one of the reasons we created this business. My wife married me, a dairy farmer. She was raised believing she was lactose intolerant. If she drinks any milk from the grocery store being conventional, she'll get a migraine. If she has a little piece of cheese on a hamburger and it is made in a certain way, she'll get a migraine. A friend of hers urged her to try some raw milk. She did, and it didn't bother her. It literally was life changing for her, and that is one of the reasons we knew that this business needed to be created.
So what is raw milk? It's straight from the cow?
Straight from the cow. It's run through a filter, but that's it.
And why can't we do that? Why is it illegal to do that? Or why do you have to cook it?
Honestly, now the government in the state legislature is probably as open as they've ever been for raw milk. When we started this business, you could only sell it here on the farm. Now you can have drop off points and and do things like that, and it makes things a lot easier. Um, why do you need to pasteurize it? Well, if you don't trust who you're getting it from, it needs to be pasteurized. So it goes back to knowing your farm. I would caution anyone to get raw milk who hasn't visited the farm that they're getting it from.
Do y'all sell raw milk here in your store?
We do. We do. We don't push it. That's not our core business. Our core business is low-temp pasteurized, non-homogenized. All the value that you get from raw milk, you can get from low-temp pasteurized, non-homogenized. And we're allowed to sell it at grocery stores, to distributors. And, so the raw milk is always going to be a niche market.
Right.
So
there's a lot of people promoting raw milk and how it helps your gut microbiome and helps you digest food better. So that at least those are the people that I follow on my social media, and they're talking about it more and more.
Yeah, it's definitely a good thing. But just know where you're getting it from. That goes from your egg supplier to your beef supplier to who you're getting spinach from. You're talking about, obviously the concern with raw milk is it going to make me sick. More people get sick and injured from spinach than all the dairy products and meat products combined. Like vegetables make more people sick than dairy products and beef products have for a long time.
What do you say to the people that argue? And I don't know if it's mostly from like the vegan community, but there's also the carnivore community also talks about how you only need to drink milk if you're trying to get fat. Like milk makes you fat. We're the only species on the planet that drinks another animal's milk. Like what do you say to those types of arguments?
I mean, we're the only species that drinks another species milk. Well, I cannot argue with that. That sounds about right. We are the only ones to do a lot of things.
We're the only ones that fly too, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly where I was going to go with that.
Right.
I as far as milk goes, the studies that I've seen, I'm thinking back to the A1, A2 studies. back in Australia and New Zealand. The studies that I've seen show that there's different types of milk. So if you have a conventional milk, it is more likely to make you fat. If you're drinking raw milk, it is more likely to help you lose weight. Not if you're drinking a gallon of it, but if you're having a glass in the morning. And so I don't know the science behind everything, but we already discussed that real milk has enzymes that help boost your metabolism.
Mm.
And so I would have to say it just depends on what you're eating. And so I would say that about anything. Eating fruit can help you lose weight. But if that fruit is turned into juice and it's concentrated sugar, no, it's going to make you fat. There has to be more information given than just saying milk will make you fat. I drink about 2 gallons a week.
I bet you got it right here. Huh?
I do not. I do not hold back. I would say that there needs to be more studies, actual studies about those types of things. But I don't hold to that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. If someone, can you freeze milk? Like if someone was to buy, I'm just thinking for my selfish reason, like say I want to start ordering from you, can I freeze it?
Yeah, people do that, especially for raw milk. Since you have to travel to go get it, they'll put it in the freezer. They'll get like 8 gallons at a time. What it'll do, it'll change the texture of the milk.
It makes it thicker.
Or I don't know how to describe it. I would say maybe a little bit more grainy. And you have to have a very nice palate to be able to tell the difference.
I was going to say meaty.
Yeah.
Makes it meaty.
Yeah.
What's the biggest challenge that you're seeing right now from your operation? What's kind of the biggest business challenge that you're experiencing? Are y'all in major box, or I guess like HEB and stuff?
So we're not in HEBs. We've been in central markets. HEB and central market are kind of hard for small businesses to be part of. They kind of nickel and dime you. Maybe large companies can budget for those types of things. Smaller companies find it more difficult. We're in Whole Foods. A lot of the micro grocers like Cox's Farmers Market in Dallas, Ann's Grocers in Dallas. There's several of those. Wheatsville down in Austin. Like those types of places. Yeah.
Apparently your wife was saying y'all are in a lot of coffee shops too.
Yeah. Coffee shops have been very good to us.
And it's just spreading by the word of mouth?
At this point in time. Not in the beginning, but at this point in time.
Is there a difference in between how long your milk lasts compared to the conventional? Like how long it stays fresh?
So it is made with that
tender love and care.
Yeah. I'm gonna go through the entire thing. So it's made with 16 days shelf life on it. But so if we make it on a Tuesday afternoon, it's on a truck headed somewhere to be delivered, to be used, Wednesday morning at 2 a.m.
Wow. So
that's kind of one way we make up for having a little bit shorter shelf life. However, it is a little bit shorter. And it's a little bit more fragile product than, say, conventional high temp pasteurized milk is.
Right.
So you have to handle it properly.
Well, that would make sense because you're not putting any added stabilizers in it, so that only makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the things, the chemicals that are put into milk, not just milk, water, juice, you name it. I mean, there's defoaming agents in some of it. There's the cleaning products, so they can have up to 0.99% of the whatever chemical they're using to clean their pipes. Uh, Man, I can't even think of some of these things, but is like we already discussed, you can have up to less than 1% of a chemical and not put it on the label.
That's scary, man.
Mm.
Do y'all have big plans of expanding
I'm
other locations? I mean,
I'm kind of wore out.
really?
No, it's always going to be a niche market. So yeah,
Do you think so though? I mean, with the rise of like I almost feel like it's a rise of the food revolution almost because you're seeing and again it's a buzzword, right? The regenerative raised meat in restaurants now. Like Hop Dottie has grass fed, grass finished. Like you're seeing these words in restaurants and people are catching on.
so I get what you're saying, and my rebuttal would have to be that if we get too big, we're going to be just like everyone else, chasing a dollar, and we're trying to make the best gallon of milk that has ever been put in front of you. So, I mean, it almost has to be a niche product.
Yeah.
And so if we make this where it's 100 load a day, which would be like 600,000 gallons of milk a day, like some of these big milk plants can produce, I guarantee you there'll be no quality. Well, they could promise that it's clean, but that's about it.
You hit on it a little bit, but can you talk about the differences between how the animals are treated here and your partners versus maybe at a conventional dairy farm?
Yeah, so there are 4 companies in our little association, 4 dairies, ours and 3 others. We have a nutritionist who runs around every Wednesday, looks at the animals, makes sure that they're healthy, being treated properly, checks their manure and tests it so that, make sure they're getting enough energy, enough protein, and so on and so forth. Checks the actual feed rations to make sure that those are all appropriate. For instance, if they're getting hay, and the hay went from being really good to being really bad, we need to change something. And so he makes sure all those things. He makes sure that the dairymen are acting appropriately, and then we have a meeting and go over everything. So he signs off on everything. How do other people take care of stuff? Well, how they see fit.
Yeah.
For the most part, organic associations will come in and do audits and whatnot, but we do it weekly, and we're all here in the Waco area, so we're all local together. So it's not like we're spread across the United States. So um, they're all fed non-GMO, no corn, no soy. They all get to go out and sleep on grass. They get to, pretty much get 6 weeks vacation every year. And I'm talking about the cows.
Not you.
Yeah, 6 weeks from the next time they have a calf, they go out and their job is to sleep, eat, and just get fat. And then they have another calf and they come in and we milk them twice a day. We're not pushing them, where an average farm is going to be, wanting for a larger cow, say 70 pounds of milk a day. If we get 60 pounds, we're happy. And so it is pretty low key. They're milking 3 times a day. We're milking twice a day.
Hmm.
It is totally different than what they're doing 100%.
You mentioned something too about the life expectancy of a cow here versus in a conventional farm is much longer, right?
Yeah. So on a conventional farm right now, it's going to be somewhere around 5.5 years. Ours, I couldn't even tell you. We've had animals live 21 years. Pretty much, uh, as long as they can get pregnant, they get to stick around here.
Hmm.
And the reason that animals don't live long in a conventional farm is because, well, two things. First, the feed, they push them. They push corn. They push soybeans. They push all this stuff into them, and it's like a high-end sports car being pushed to its limit. They go fast, but they burn the engines up, and they don't really make that many miles. Whereas we're like that old diesel truck that goes a million miles before it breaks down. It actually pays off for conventional farms. They do this for a reason. They figured out that they can actually make more money if they just push them a little bit harder, and they still, it doesn't increase their cost per year, but if they can get $1 a day more per head, then it is worth it for them just to go use those cattle up, sell them off, and trade it in for something new and do it all over again and just keep cycling through those cows.
Those inputs, soy, the corn, they may be getting more milk out, but have you tested the quality of your milk, like the vitamin nutrients? Is there a big difference?
So, there is. I'm having a hard time remembering exactly how different, but I can tell you that within 3 days of not feeding corn to a dairy cow, the E. coli counts in a cow go to almost nothing. So, if a cow is infected with E. coli and then you stop feeding them corn, like that E. coli goes to almost nothing. So, it's not just the nutrients. I mean, you got like laminitis in the summertime. So here in Central Texas, we deal with heat, not cold. Feeding those animals corn and soy in the summertime, so it lowers the oxygen in their blood, which weakens their heels, and it actually causes laminitis, which will, it'll kill cattle. And, it affects, if they can't walk, they don't eat, and it's just a downward spiral. If they're not eating, for the end customer, so ethically that's already bad enough, but for the end customer, if they're not eating, they're not healthy. And once again, healthy cows make healthy milk.
Yeah. It's wild, man. You opened my eyes to a world that I wasn't even, of all these nuances of dairy,
Yeah.
I guess the biggest surprise for me is like the inputs that people buy in conventional milk in the store. That's scary. And it's all of it. It's even the organic, the clean milk that we think we're buying. We're still buying stuff that's made with chemical inputs.
And once again, man, I don't want to run down the dairy industry. It's all of those industries. It's everybody.
That's scary, dude. But you have children, right?
Yeah, one.
Is the idea to pass on the farm to the next generation?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Is she getting trained up or what?
Yes. We love homeschooling. We homeschool with her. And she's a wonderful student, but it also gives her the opportunity. She has a job. She helps with the store, and
Yeah.
she helps, around the dairy as well. So she's already getting a hands-on education.
That's awesome. Were you homeschooled?
I was not.
No, you went to the public school.
Yeah.
My wife and I are talking about homeschooling our kids.
Dude, I'm going to tell you, without a doubt, I could talk to you for another hour about that. My daughter, I mean, she's intelligent. She's smart. But it's not like she is Einstein. I'm her math teacher. She will, at the pace she's going, she will have a math degree by the time she's 18 years old.
Wow.
And I mean, it's on the parent to have the drive, because the kid's not going to have it,
Yeah.
But if you're that kind of parent who, and I'm not saying being that tiger dad or something who's just like pushing, but no, just being active and moving forward on it. Yeah, there's definitely time. In fact, I spend less time teaching my daughter math from scratch than I did reteaching the stuff that the public school was teaching. And she didn't have a bad public school. It really wasn't. It just wasn't a good fit for her.
I talked to somebody on a podcast from the Texas Homeschool Coalition, and he was saying that homeschool kids outperform students in the public school system just about by every mark that they can be measured on. And he said something else interesting, because I was nervous about homeschooling my kids. My wife and I both have college degrees, and we're fairly smart, but there's a fear of taking that plunge. We don't want to mess up our kids. But he was saying that the parents that don't have college degrees and homeschool their kids, those kids outperform it by and large than compared to the parents that do have college degrees, which was pretty wild.
I could see that, because you go into it with your eyes wide open saying, we're going to hit this hard. We're going to move forward.
Right.
We're going to do everything we can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not holding anything back. I could see that.
It was wild, man. Well, Craig, I love everything you're doing, man, and I appreciate your time. I'm glad I was able to speak with you. How can people follow Mill-King? Or you're on social media? And they can order your product too.
Yep. So you can order a product. I mean, we're on the interwebs. You look us up, and it'd be easiest just to call us or email us at info@millking.com.
Awesome, man. Well, I learned a lot today, and I appreciate you for showing us around. It was a pleasure, man, and I hope to do it again.
It was fun.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.